Hey everybody, it's time for a new soldering tutorial with our monthly soldering kit, the Cyberbox kit. Let's go over what we get this month. We get get a little paper. We got some stickers, so we're putting some stickers in with our kits now. Here's our kit. There's a little thank you card. It's got our Twitter and Instagram, our Facebook, and our website. If you take any pictures of you building the kit or videos or anything like that, send them our way. We'd love to see them. So I'm going to take the sticker and put it back in the box. We'll keep the paper out. Let's go over the paper. So it goes over a little bit of what each individual component does in this keyboard kit. Some important notes. The LEDs have to be pointed in the right direction we put them in. The Arduino Nano, the USB port has to go to the outside of the board. You'll see what I mean a little bit later. And the battery, you have a positive, negative lead on the battery. That has to be on there right. And then there's a speaker, which also has a positive, negative lead that has to be on there right. And then down here is a little website, and that's where you can find all the additional instructions and this video right here that I'm making. On the back, we have our parts lists. There's pictures of the board. There's the front of the board, the back of the board, just in case there's any questions about that. And then again, the website. So let's take this piece of paper, we'll put it away. Let's open up our kit. A lot of parts in this one. So we get our PCB board. We got a battery. We got a battery holder. We have these pins. And then we have these sockets. That's for the Arduino Nano. You'll see more about what those do later. We're going to put those aside. We have a speaker. Now it has a sticker on it. Leave the sticker on it until we're done. You got an LED. Put that up there. We got some resistors. There's two different kinds of resistors here. There's a 1000 ohm and a 100 ohm. Let's zoom in a little bit and we'll see a little bit more about those. So the 1000 ohm is brown, black, red, while the 100 ohm is brown, black, brown. And that's important because later when we use our board, you see there's a 100 on the board. That's where your brown, black, brown is going to go. And then there's a 1000. And that's where your brown, black, red is going to go. So let's not get these mixed up. You're going to have trouble if you do. And then we have this also. It's a little 2x3 6-pin connector. These come with the Arduino Nano for in-circuit serial programming. We're not going to need it for this kit, but it's there. And if you want to add it to the Nano, you just put it on the top. Hold on a second. Put it on the top just like that. And you solder it in. But we're not going to be doing that during this tutorial. But if you want to, go for it. We have a USB cable. Let's zoom back out. A USB cable. And then all these beautiful buttons. So the first thing we're going to put on when we get started is our buttons. We're going to put all this together. Might even do a little bit of programming. But before we can do any of that, we have to go over our safety rules. So let's do that. Soldering safety rules. These are important, so pay attention. Always keep your work area clean and organized. Soldering can be dangerous. Keeping your work area clean will help prevent accidents from happening and keep you safe. Only solder in well-ventilated areas. Turn on a fan if you have one. Maybe open a window, right? You want the fumes to leave your area so they don't go up your nose. Now, if a little bit does, it's okay. But if you're soldering a lot, you need to have a fan, fume extractor, things like that. But really, if you just turn on a ceiling fan or you have a little oscillating fan near you, you'll be okay. So use care while soldering. You should know that soldering irons are hot. That means you might get burned. It's okay. Everyone gets burned at least once when you're soldering. You solder enough, you're going to get burned. We can use things like tweezers and clamps to help. I don't think we're going to need that for this project. But just be aware the soldering irons are hot and it hurts when you get burned. Never leave your soldering equipment on when you're not there to watch it. So if you walk away, go ahead and turn your soldering iron off. Yeah, it takes time to heat back up when you come back, but guess what? You're not catching anything on fire when you walk away, right? So the smart thing is just go ahead and turn the thing off, and it'll be there when you get back. If you're using a sponge to clean your soldering iron, like this one right here that's not wet, because I'm actually going to be using this, but if you're going to use a sponge to clean your soldering iron, it needs to be wet. It needs to be really wet, okay? Don't use a dry sponge to clean your soldering iron. Always wear eye protection. Glasses, safety glasses, goggles. Solder gets up to 400 degrees Celsius. Now, if 400 degrees Celsius solder gets in your eye, you're going to have a really bad day. You're going to end up in the hospital, and there's just going to be trouble. So always wear some sort of eye protection. No matter what you do, wash your hands. So solder, this right here, has a flux type of material on the inside. That's what makes it work. And that flux material can be considered toxic. So before you eat, before you touch your face, before you drink something, right? Go ahead and wash your hands. Do not use soldering equipment that has obvious damage. If you have a soldering iron and it's damaged, maybe it's melted, the cord's broken on it, something like that, don't use it. Get it repaired or buy a new one. And always try to manage your waste in one place. So that could be a magnet tray. That could be a little bin that you just throw your waste in. But that way it doesn't get on the floor. You don't want to clip the leads on these LEDs and then end up on the floor. Now that we've done our safety rules, let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put these buttons on the board. Now there's 17 buttons, and I could just put all 17 on at one time, solder them all in, but you're going to have some trouble when you do that. So what I like to do is I like to do like 4 at a time. It makes it a little bit more manageable. And then what you can do is you can hold it with one thumb, and then with your other finger, just kind of take your fingernail and bend the leads down a little bit. But what that'll do is help keep the buttons from falling out. You get a good mechanical connection. We talked about this before. When soldering, if you can get a good mechanical connection, holding things on the board when you're soldering, it's so much easier. So like I do this, and then the buttons stay on the board. See that? So let's take my soldering iron. And these things are a little tricky. So we're going to go over a little bit of some tips and tricks on putting these buttons on. So I have my solder. Let's go ahead and zoom in. And I'll show you what I'm going to do to try to make this a little bit cleaner. And I'm going to solder just one pin on each button. That's it. There's only 4 buttons, so I'm only soldering 4 pins. And now, if you look, buttons are kind of crooked. So I can take my finger and heat up that pin. And set it back in. And now that button's straight. So I'm just going to do that for all of them. Okay, so now we have all the buttons on our keyboard. So next, let's go ahead and put the resistors on. Okay, now remember there's 2 different kinds of resistors. We have our 1000 and we have our 100. So we'll put our 1000 right there and put our 100 right there. Let's go ahead and solder those on. Now I can take my handy dandy Cyber City Circuits cutters and cut those leads off. Remember, pull it away from your face when you're cutting it, because they might shoot up into your face. Alright, so next, let's go ahead, we'll put in our speaker. Now you notice the speaker has a long lead and a short lead. There's also a sticker on it that shows you which side is positive. And there's a hole on the board marked positive. So it needs to go in that way. If you put it in backwards, you're going to have trouble with it. I'm going to solder one end first. And it's going to be a little crooked. Okay? But I got solder on it, so then I'm going to take it and heat it up. Then I'm going to move my board and put some pressure on it so that it's nice and square on top of the speaker. And if your speaker, after you make this, if your speaker makes this, like a lot of buzzing sounds when you don't think it's supposed to, try to just heat it up and try to get some space between the board. Squeeze the speaker to the board a little bit better. That usually fixes it. Again, my wire cutters. And then I'm going to put my LED on it. And again, LED has a long leg and a short leg. The long leg is positive. You see there's a long line next to it. The short leg is negative. And it has to go that way or else it will not work. And I'll clip those leads. And now we're almost done. We just have the Nano to put on and the power connector. So let's go ahead and put the Nano on. We have these little sockets that we're going to be able to plug our Nano into. These can be a little tricky, so let's take our time with these. I'm going to just flip it over, the sockets in there, just like that, and I'm going to do one side of each, with just one side. Make sure that they're straight, and then I'll go ahead and I'm going to do the other side, just the other side though. Okay? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take these pins and I'm going to put those in the socket. Remember, I only have two pins on each one of these soldered. All these are not soldered yet, but I'm trying to make sure it fits. So now I have my pins in the socket, and we'll put my Nano on the pins. See that? Now everything's as straight as it needs to be. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to solder these on. Now when you're doing long rows of pins like this, it's always better to go top to bottom like this. Now I want to do the same thing, but for the Nano. Now this is going to be a little tricky. You're going to have to use some attention to detail. So I'm going to do this side first. I'm going to go top to bottom. And then I'm going to turn my board around. And I'm going to go top to bottom here. And that's it. So now, the reason we use a socket is now we could take this off and you use this for other projects. But also, you can just plug it right into this board and you get your music keyboard. Let's go ahead and connect our battery connector. So, if you look at it, there's a hole marked positive and there's a hole marked negative. So the black wire is going to go through the negative hole, right? And then the red wire is going to go through the positive hole. I'm going to tap it with some solder. Just like that. So now if I take my battery, let's go open this battery up. And I plug it in. See, it turns on. I can take my sticker off to protect this. It's noisy. Remember how before I told you if it's a little noisy? Let's power this off. If it's a little noisy, you just kind of squeeze the speaker back in. A little bit of room between the board and the speaker, just squeeze it and then heat the pads. And a lot of times that'll fix a lot of that squeaking that the speaker does. Yeah, see? Yeah, it all went away. Look at that. That's pretty cool. In the kit, you also get a USB cable, and that's made to hook this up to your computer so you could reprogram it yourself and do all kinds of things with it.